Hmm. Now comes the main thing, the DFT case. Okay. So to understand this, I will also write here the DTFT equations, because in that case we can easily relate them. E to the power minus j omega n. Fine. And instead of omega n, let's write what was our omega? We actually 2 pi f by fs into n. Okay. So here what is happening is we are actually sampling our frequency domain signal also. So assume that my frequency domain signal was something like this. Okay, and when we are sampling this, so by sampling this, we mean that we are dividing this into n number of samples. Okay, so let's say this is ranging from minus pi to plus pi, and the region here will be 2 pi. Okay, and I am dividing my 2 pi value of frequency into n parts. So one bin, this particular bin will be equivalent to 2 pi by n. Is that correct or not?
Yes.
Okay. And now let's assume that to represent each individual bin, we take one variable k. It is a running variable and it is ranging from 0 to n minus 1. So that's how I can represent each bin. So if I write after sampling, I can write it like e to the power minus j 2 pi n. Let's write it, or each bin. Let's write each bin 2 pi by n multiplied by k multiplied by n. So this thing will shift here, n will be n. So this is how we reach to a DFT equation. Okay, so remember here, the value of n, which is also DFT size or FFT size, will determine my resolution also, because lower the value of n, higher will be the spacing between higher will be the spacing between consecutive or adjacent frequency band. And if the value of n is very high, all the frequency bands will be placed very close to each other. So this will actually define the resolution, and we will actually see what is the impact of this as we go further. Okay, so this is how we reach to a DFT formula. So you don't need to remember it, just try to understand that why we got this particular term 2 pi n k by n. So we should, because not till now we are familiar with e to the power minus j omega n. Okay, so this is DFT, and similarly, on a similar note, we can get IDFT. Okay, this is inverse transform, and yeah, because both cases xn and xk are discrete, so we have summations at both places. Okay, I want everyone to be on the same page on DFT concept. If you have any doubts, please speak up. Okay, I think there are no doubts, so let's proceed. Yeah, so this is one example that is simulated from MATLAB. So this is just to show that how it looks, that this is a time domain on the left side. It is a time domain. Yeah, this is a time domain sync pulse. Okay, and we know that when we take Fourier transform of a sync pulse, what we get? A rectangular pulse. Okay, so this is a frequency domain rect pulse. Okay, But you may be noticing that this is not a perfect rectangular pulse. Can someone tell me the reason why? Vipul, are you speaking something? Because I cannot listen.
Yeah, it's I can think of as a Gibbs phenomena where the at the edges, right? This frequency is like a, I mean,
Uh-huh.
because this
So,
comes when there is a, this edges comes when there is a high difference in the frequency. Straight difference in the frequency from high to low.
yes.
It's like this.
But if I ask you one question, that where is a straight reference from high to low frequency? Like how, why that is coming? Why it does not come when we read about the ideal signal? Like we saw example in our books that we take Fourier transform sync pulse. It is a perfect rectangular pulse. Why there is no high to low transition there?
Maybe because we are doing the windowing of this
Correct.
sync pulse.
Correct.
Because if we consider the complete sync pulse, it's ranging from minus infinity to plus infinity. But here
Mhm.
we actually windowing the signal, so it is like we are cutting down the signals.
Correct. Correct. So for others purpose, windowing here means that ideally those Fourier transform where the Fourier transform is perfectly rectangular. In that case, the sync pulse is an infinite time sync pulse. It ranges from minus infinity to infinity. But when we come to implementation, we cannot process infinite amount of signal. So we have to limit our sync pulse from, let's say, time 0 to time 10. It could be any value. So we window it. One way of understanding window is I just pass through a rectangular window. Okay, I'll say that I'll just take from 0 to 10. So that windowing impact is reflected as here. Okay, one more intuition of looking into this. So by windowing, you can consider that I'm multiplying two signals. I'm multiplying a rectangle, sorry, I'm multiplying a sync pulse with a rectangular function. Okay. And multiplying two signals in time domain, what does it mean in frequency domain? I have to convolve them. Okay. And by convolving, we mean that I have to convolve a rectangular pulse and a sync pulse. So that impact can be seen here. And yes, because we are limiting it, so there is a sharp, and yeah, whatever Vipul said that this is a Gibbs phenomenon, and we see that it is a transition from high to low frequency. So that high to low frequency is again coming from here. There is a sharp discontinuity. I am just from a finite, let's say, it will be some, it will be some magnitude, and from that I'm just dropping to zero. So this is a discontinuous signal, and that's why it is causing some spikes, which are some higher frequency. Okay. Now let's see the, as I said, that FFT size also. Yes.
So one more thing, in the diagram, like, so when we convolve this, it's like a sync. In time domain, it's a sync into rectangular, right? The
Yes.
signal is
Yes.
okay, and then it's a convolution of there it's a rectangular with sync, right? So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
why there is a nature of sync
Yes.
inside the
Yes.
rectangular. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, with this, I something came into my mind that it will be a good practice for all of you to window it with different functions. So instead of windowing with it with a rectangular functions, I think in MATLAB also you can find different windowing techniques. So you can try with windowing different with different functions. And let's observe here there that whether this pattern changes or not. I have not done that experiment, but it will be a good experiment. Okay. For now, I'll proceed. That let's see the impact or the effect of the DFT size. Yeah. So here again, I have done the same experiment, and I have plotted the the DFT of sync pulse for different values of capital N. So here we can notice the if DFT size is 512. In this case, it is 1024, doubled it, 2048, and this is 4096. So this one we can say is the most accurate, most closer to an actual rectangular pulse. Why? Because we said there that, let's say this is my DTFT Exos omega, and for DFT what we do, we sample it, and these are n number of samples here, 0 to n minus 1. So the frequency bin width is 2 pi by n. So if these bins are, consider two cases, n is equals to, n is equals to 4096 and n is equals to 204. So for 4096 case, these bins will be more close to each other, and it will be more close to a continuous signal. Correct? That's why for higher values of n, we are more close to an ideal signal. Again, we are not saying that it is actually an ideal signal, but if we just compare these two cases, this one obviously wins. But I said that this one obviously wins, but nothing comes for free. Higher value of n comes with higher computational complexity. So again, every time if we are gaining something, we have to lose something. So there is a trade-off here, that we have to compute more number of times. We have to process more number of samples. Okay. Yeah. So these are some details of the fast Fourier transform. So fast Fourier transform, it is not a new Fourier transform. This is point one. It is just an efficient algorithm to compute DFT. Okay, so fast Fourier transform, functionality wise, it is similar to DFT. But if I go by the DFT way of computing my Fourier transform, it will take some more time, but FFT will take lesser amount of time. The time taken to evaluate a DFT on a digital computer depends principally on the number of additions and multiplications. Because in these formulas, these are what? These formulas are what? Some multiplications and then additions. Correct? So when I am trying to calculate the FFT, my computational complexity will depend that how many multiplication, how many additions I am doing. And for DFT case, it is of the order of n square. While for the case of FFT, it is n log n. And we know that logarithmic is a slow increase than a square case or an exponential case. So this is the comparison between the computational complexity of DFT and FFT. So when n goes higher, the computational speed becomes a major consideration, and that's why FFT is more efficient. But yeah, functionality wise, both are same. Yeah, so in literature and in industry, that FFT operates by decomposing, and again, I'll not go into much details of this. I just want to touch upon these concepts there so that you can evolve on this. You can read by yourself and can evolve on this. So FFT operates by decomposing this. In this case, let's say it is 16-point signal. It decomposes it at every stage is decomposed them into half. So 16 to 8, 8 to 4, 4 to 2, and 2 to finally 1. And then it does some processing on each of them, multiplies some phasor, then add them. It backtracks them, basically. It goes to them and finally it reaches to a 16-point Fourier transform signal, frequency domain signal. Lastly, the n spectra are synthesized into a single frequency spectrum. And yeah, some techniques. So this particular structure is also known as radix structure. I think most of you are familiar with that. But till now, I think most of the books like Oppenheimer or those only mentions radix 2 structure. But in industry, some more efficient algorithm of FFT have also came, like radix 4, radix 3, radix 5. So those are also competing with radix 2 structure in terms of efficiency or in terms of computational complexity.